Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, guys, and welcome to the GSPN Daily Brighton podcast. It's your boy, Jamie G. I'm here with Blessings Chabamba. Introduce yourself, Bless.
Hi, guys. Glad to be back.
And I'm also joined by Rich. How we doing, Rich?
New season, 4 wins out of 4. We're going to win the league.
I love the optimism. So yeah, on today's podcast, we're going to talk about last season. What were the highlights of last season? What were some lowlights of last season? And then we're going to wrap it up with our predictions for the upcoming season. So yeah, last season, I think there were some highs, some lows, and Rich, we'll start with you. What do you think our best points of last season were?
Well, it's all about the Europa League last season. Brighton's first ever time competing in Europe. You know, I go back to my time watching Brighton at the Goldstone Grounds, at the Wivdean Stadium, travelling to Gillingham, into some really, really disgusting stadiums in the lower leagues of football, to actually going and having Brighton play football at the Stadio Olimpico, at the Ajax Amsterdam Arena, in Marseille. Like, that was so freaking cool, man. Like, as a kid, I grew up wishing Brighton would be in the Premier League and for them to be in Europe. So I got to see them beat Ajax, former European champions. I got to see them beat Marseille. Absolutely incredible. You know, there's so many bad things about last season as well, but I don't think we can take away just how far the club has come to play European football last season. That is easily my high.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about some of the amazing points that we had last season, like you said, winning our group in the Europa League, going to the next stage. I mean, there was a bit of hope there for so long. Bless, what was some of the best moments that you had?
Yeah, no, I echo some of the same things Richard just talked about, like being in Europe. It was just an absolutely unbelievable experience just to see it happening, and you can tell there was like a real just buzz around for the fans and the club, like a real energy. Yeah, obviously towards the end it started being a bit up and down when Europa football finished, but yeah, overall as a year, Brighton being in Europa League, that's just sensational. If you take away all the other little bits that came with the season, that yeah, it's a really good season.
Yeah. And there were some highlights in the Prem as well. I know you've mentioned about some lowlights that we've had, but I mean, we beat Tottenham convincingly. We beat Man United convincingly. And I think that was some of the best football that I actually saw against Tottenham and
Yeah.
against Man United was some of the best football that I actually watched. Rich, you went to that game. Tell us about it. What was the atmosphere like?
That Brighton Spurs game at Christmas, I took my mother and father-in-law to their first ever game at the Amex. They've been recruited as Brighton fans ever since I got married. They watch the games in the States, so they got their Piglets pantry pie. They had their Brighton hats on, and they were all good to go. And Brighton, was a lot of criticism around De Zerbi that however good they played, they only had a plan A, and he actually played a plan B for the first time. And we absolutely battered Spurs. Yes, Spurs had a lot of defensive issues and injuries, but we were so on top of them. And players like Jack Hinchelwood had really good games. Buonanotte had really good games. And we didn't have any of our wingers due to the big injury crisis that we had. There was like no players like the likes of Matoma and March and things like that. So it's so good. But one of my personal favourite memories is as the Spurs fans started leaving early with about 20 minutes to go, you've got my mother-in-law waving cheerio, cheerio, cheerio.
We love to hear that.
Yeah. We also can't forget we beat Palace. A very easy 4-1. Now that has got to be every Brighton fan listening to this podcast's dream, wasn't it? Beating them at the Amex quite easily, really. And we didn't lose to them last season. The other game was a draw. So there we go. What we got to say?
Well, I'm hoping for the same again this season. I know our Palace GSBN friends are absolutely buzzing to get started after they finish strongly. But I reckon, once again, yeah, the Seagulls will rise above the Eagle.
Love it. God, you should get that on a t-shirt,
Yeah,
bless.
you know what? I thought about that, and I was like, that was decent.
He's dropping bars.
Yeah.
Uh, and who were the standout performers of last season, do you reckon?
I think João Pedro, in moments, showed that he could hold down that number 9 shirt um, for a long period of times. I did feel at times he did drift in and out of games, but he scored some important goals. So I think hopefully this year he can build on that. But yeah, he stood out from some important goals for me.
Well, he
Yeah.
took a bit of time developing there, didn't he? Because Ferguson started the season so well, and Ferguson certainly was the man when it came to August, September, and then stopped scoring after that. And João Pedro was really the player that De Zerbi would turn to for the Europa League. Started getting all those goals, and then ultimately became one of our most potent attackers. Of course, he scored a lot of penalties, but if anything's to go by what we saw in that friendly the other day with that absolute fantastic strike against Villarreal, I think we're going to get a lot more goals. I also think last season Van Hecke has come on a lot. You know, he was fourth, maybe fifth choice the year before, and now he's pretty much locked in to be Dunk's partner, plus maybe someone else. Matt Hummels, we're hearing the rumours and things like that. But I mean, Van Hecke's spot in the side was confirmed by a really, really strong season by him. Of course, players like Hinshelwood coming through was really good. Gross was always really reliable. Dunk was really reliable. The two goalkeepers didn't disappoint either that season. But the one player who I really enjoyed watching last season was Simon Adingra, because you had Solly March and you had Matoma as almost the locks for the wingers. And Adingra had not played top flight football in England before, and he came in, and towards the end, he was our most attacking, our biggest threat. And what's interesting is we're going to go into this season, probably not with him in the starting 11 again, but I think he's still got a big season to play this year.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I loved watching Matoma, especially after the AFCON. I think he grew because the Ivory Coast won the African Cup of Nations. I think he grew in confidence, and you saw
Adingra.
that on the pitch. Yeah. And I think you saw that on the pitch. He was taking people on. It was like a newfound Adingra that I hope we're going to see this season. And I think he kind of solidified himself as a starter. Like, I feel like if you don't have his name on a team sheet, I feel like you're missing out, or you maybe didn't watch him last season. But I loved watching him towards the end of the season, like taking people on. He looked a threat every time he touched the ball, especially when Mitoma got injured. I think that was where he really shone.
Well, that's interesting, because on one of our podcasts this week, we'll be talking about our Dream First 11, because I don't think Adingra's going to start.
Yeah.
I thought
But
you
we'll
would,
save
yeah.
that for another day.
Well, it'll be
Um,
interesting to see what teams he makes it into.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to take a quick break now, play a little ad, and then we'll be back to talk about those lowlights that we have spoken about or touched on already. Brace yourself, Brighton fans. See you after the ads. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencaster makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K audio recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencaster makes it easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster. Thank you very much, Jamie G. What a lovely voice that is. We are
I
back.
feel like you could sell stair lifts.
I've got that sort of charisma, don't I?
Yeah, I'll be buying those.
So yeah, we're back. We're going to talk about some lows this season, and guys, just tell me, where did it all go wrong? Rich, start us off.
Oh, it was the 43rd minute on the 7th of March in Italy where Dunk loses the ball. Lukaku comes through, makes it 2-0. Brighton lose 4-0. And then the season ended. Then it felt like De Zerbi had downed his tools and kind of went, they didn't buy me any players in January, and he's not going to buy me any players, so I can't be bothered. And that's okay. That's a little bit over egging it, and that probably isn't the case. But from the outside looking in, that's how it felt. That's how it seemed. It felt like someone had gone, I don't want to be here anymore. And so pretty much we can go through nearly all the games after that day and call them lowlights. Yeah, what do we get? 1 or 2 wins? I was there for the home win against Roma, and that was such a weird feeling because we won 1-0 but lost 4-1 on aggregate, and you're like leaving going, we've just beaten one of the best teams in all of Europe, and I feel nothing. It was like winning a friendly,
Yeah, I think Lukaku putting Dunk on the weights was definitely the downfall of the season, because you could look at the whole of April. From then on, the whole of April was absolutely atrocious. It was officially being knocked out of the Europa League. Then it was draws against Burnley, of all teams, who couldn't buy a draw or couldn't buy a win, and we've ended up drawing to them. Then we got pumped by Arsenal, City, and even Bournemouth. What the hell, bless?
Yeah, that Bournemouth one especially was a massive surprise because, I mean, although they're a seaside team, I don't think they're
Yeah.
regarded as rivals, but anything down south in our way, sort of, we should be beating 3-0. I know it was away as well, but that was a tough watch because Bournemouth were excellent that day.
Yeah, I think it is. We just want to reign supreme over the South, don't we? Although it's not a rivalry, or Sky Sports try and make it a rivalry. They go the South Coast Derby when they advertise it on TV. It's not a
Quite a
derby.
fair few miles away.
Yeah, it's only a couple of hours.
And it's not like many Brighton fans can get in the away end anyway.
Yeah. Aye, 10 can. 10. But yeah, that was a serious low moment, especially when they were in and around us, weren't they, as well? They were pushing for, we were kind of pushing for those Europa League spots again. They were in and around us, and that was kind of the nail in the coffin, I felt, when they beat us. I think they went ahead of us then. And that was kind of the moment where you go, yeah, we're just going to have to settle for 11th or 12th or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
Who do you think were the flops of the season? Who do you think let us down last year?
Oh, Ansu Fati. I was so excited about signing Ansu Fati. I think I put a tweet out going, Brighton are playing in Europe. They've got De Zerbi. They're beating everyone. Ferguson scoring a hat-trick. And we've signed Ansu Fati, the heir to Messi, number 10. We're going to give him a year. That guy was useless. I know he got injured, and I know he probably got injured just as he was starting to get into the team. But I watched a couple of the games. I was away at the Chelsea game in the Carabao Cup, which I don't know how we lost that because we battered them and somehow lost. Nicholas Jackson, of all people, scored. That's how weird that game was. And he doesn't move. He played in like a number 10 role and didn't move. And he just wasn't part of the build-up in any way. So for me, he's top flop. I think we paid 2/3 of his wages, which were apparently like 180 grand a week. So the guy was earning 120 grand a week for doing nothing.
Yeah, I think, well, he's clearly looked up to Messi. You know, when Messi just walks around the pitch, looks like he's unbothered, and suddenly switches on. Maybe Ansu Fati watched too much of that, thought he was Messi, and then just never delivered.
Yeah.
I think, go on.
No, I was just going to say he hasn't unlocked that second part where you actually do something. after standing still.
Yeah. But I think we should have probably clocked on that he wasn't going to be great when Barca were willing to loan him out, and they thought, we could probably he's expendable even in their little rot. Uh, yeah, I've got one in mind, and it pains me to say, mine is Evan Ferguson. He didn't kick on the level that I thought he would kick on. I was expecting a 15 to 20 goal season. I don't actually know what he ended up with, but I was expecting a lot more goals, a lot more starts even. He can't be getting started over Danny Welbeck still to this day. As much as I like Danny Welbeck, good baller, but
Don't do that. You know I like Daniel Welbeck. Don't do that.
it was 2023, 2024. You can't be starting Danny Welbeck.
I
Oh,
still think Ferguson's a player though. I still
Yeah,
think there's
oh
a
yeah.
good player there. I think there's probably a bit more realism, as in he probably isn't as good as that player you think he should have
Mm,
become,
yeah,
and I think he's better than the player he was towards the end of the season. It's just whether he's the middle ground and can he do it. Of course, he's going to be injured for the start of this season, and then is he
yeah,
going to get in ahead of the likes of João Pedro? And if Welbeck plays like he did on Saturday,
yeah.
unreal.
so
But bless, who's yours?
To be honest, I was gonna basically just cop out and say the performance at the end were just lackluster, like overall as a team. To be honest, I couldn't think of one particular player, but I do echo the ideas you guys have come up as well. But I think Jamie a little bit harsh on Evan Ferguson because I do
Mm,
think he was in and out of the team because of injury as well.
yeah,
Always felt like when he came back, it was always sort of trying to catch up, so he can never actually get a couple of starts in a row for him to really kick on. Um,
yeah. I mean, I have just looked it up. He scored 6 last season. So that,
and when was the last one, Jamie? Do you have that there? Because it was
yeah,
a
let's look.
long time ago.
yeah,
It was, uh,
Because he scored 3 against Newcastle, and that was
it's,
back in like August or
yeah,
September.
it was the 25th of November
wow,
against Nottingham Forest. That is just not good enough. And I think there is a player there, and I do think he's promising. But yeah, like you say, Bless, the injury concerns is a worry. Your little cop out answer though, should we just blame that on De Zerbi?
I
He's not
think
the
so.
club
Yeah,
anymore.
I think
We'll
so
put it on De
because
Zerbi.
at the end of the day, obviously, being knocked out Europa was not ideal. But you still got to give the fans something to cheer about and be happy about. And I know there was probably one or two games that were still exciting within that sort of post Europa League period, but a lot
Yeah,
of them, yeah, it was tricky. It was a hard watch. It was,
yeah.
even you can hear people on Sky Sports saying, "Oh, Brighton on the beach already," and yeah,
uh, well, there we go. Those were the lows. And Brian fans, you can now uncup your ears because we're going to talk about the expectations for next season after this little ad break. See you after the ads. Do you? This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. And welcome back to our final segment. We're going to be talking about the predictions for this season. So we finished 11th last season. Uh, we've gone over some highs, we've gone over some lows. But the question is, will we bounce back? Will we make another Europa League charge? Bless, what you thinking?
to know, I think we're in for a really exciting journey. I absolute big fan of what the manager's trying to do in terms of the style of play. But in particular, just some of the signings I want to point out. Minter, what an exciting player he's going to be. He looks like he can be a world beater this season and really cause a lot of defensive trouble. And I was really impressed actually with, surprisingly, Milner, who I don't think a lot of people expect to start, but Milner and Wafer last game were excellent in the middle. They absolutely dominated the midfield. So, yeah, I think we should be excited.
Yeah, I mean, the last season we scored 55, conceded 62. So, I mean, short of the story, we spent more time going, oh, than we did. Yes. Will that change this season, Rich?
Well, it should do under the way that we've been playing in pre-season and under the style that Hertzler likes. Like, we've certainly been much more attacking. Bless just mentioned Minte, who looks really exciting. It reminds me a little bit, it's a very easy comparison to make, but of Sadio Mane in the fact that he's always chasing down balls. He's not afraid to take on players. Of course, Mane played on the left, Minte plays on the right. So it's not quite a like for like. But with him and Matoma on the wings, we spoke about Adingra, Kozia Dubry could come in, Solly March to come back as well. There's lots of good attacking options. We've already said we expect João Pedro to score more goals. So I would expect us to be a bit more potent. Maybe we get Evan Ferguson scoring again, and he can prove you wrong, Gara. But defensively, we should be a bit better defensively. There's a lot of talk about maybe Hummels and maybe playing a back three. From what I've seen so far, it's been a back four. So we'll see kind of what happens there. And I know for one thing, during the Japan tour, Hertzler got very angry when we conceded a soft goal. He doesn't like us conceding goals. He was actually pretty unhappy in the friendly win against Villarreal when they had a chance within the first minute and hit the post. And he said, had that gone in, the game would have been completely different, which he's pretty much right about. So I think he is really focused on making sure we keep clean sheets, unlike De Zerbi, who was more like, if you score, we'll score.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key changes in philosophy between the two coaches.
That I couldn't echo anymore. I think I'm hoping we concede much less this season because, like you say, De Zerbi had that all-out kind of style. I hope, and we've seen it with the pre-season, even yesterday's game against Villarreal, where we kept a clean sheet. So you'd like to think there are some principles in there where he likes to defend. He takes pride in keeping a clean sheet, which I think is the ultimate goal. Bless, where are you thinking we're going to finish this season?
So I'm quite optimistic. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go eighth, pushing seventh, maybe. I genuinely think going forward we've got some really exciting players. But again, like you guys say, can we keep the door shut at the back? Will be the question.
You think Europa League is on the cards then? A bounce back? Rich, what are you saying to that? Where do you think we're landing?
It's 300-1 to win the league. So
and we're so far undefeated this season. So
we're so far two clean sheets in a row. Look, when I look at the squads in the Premier League, I always think it's only really City, Arsenal, and Liverpool who I feel we can't beat, like away. I feel we can beat Chelsea on our day. We can beat Spurs on our day. We can beat Man United because we've beaten those sides on our day. We can beat Newcastle. We can beat Villa. And then the rest is a much of a muchness. So if we play to our very, very best, I'm not saying we're going to finish fourth. If we finish fourth, it would be absolutely unbelievable. But I do feel it was a poor season last season because we didn't finish in the top 10. We should be a top 10 club every single year. We should be trying to improve. I think we can go better than 8th. I don't like the Europa Conference League. I think it's a little pointless, so I don't want us to finish there. So I think we'll finish, I'm going to go 6th.
Wow. God, big call there.
I like it.
A big call. I like the optimism. You can't hate it. I might be the more realist out of all of us. I
Uh-oh.
think
Negative, not realist, negative.
It's the start of the season. You're meant to be excited, Jim.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I'm going to be back on the wavelength of we're going to win the league. We're
Yes.
undefeated so far.
Let's all put our money together, 300 to 1.
Oh, easy. I am thinking we might finish. I think in the top 10. I think we might finish ninth. But like you say, I think teams around us have got so much better as well. I think that's where it could just be down to like a draw or a couple points separating from like 8th up until 13th. I think that's where it could be. Like, I think every result this season is going to be important, like in terms of trying to push for those Europa League places. And I think this is where I will have some optimism. I think our depth isn't too bad, that I think we could make a run for one of the cups. Either the FA Cup, an EFL Cup, whatever that Carabao Cup is called now, whatever that is. But yeah, I think there is, and there's no Europa League football anymore, so I think we can make a real push for it.
I think that's crucial, not having those extra games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think De Zerbi at times last season became too much of a tinker man of one squad for the Premier League, one squad for the Europa League. And I think it really stopped our momentum at times. And so the fact that Herzl is going to get more time on the training ground getting his ideas over, I think that's going to be a real positive for us this year.
Yeah, big time. Well, we look forward to the upcoming season, and we hope you all look forward to the upcoming season as well. If you could all follow us on our socials, it's GSPN_Brighton on TikTok and Instagram, and then GSPN Brighton on Twitter or X. And we'll look forward to engaging with you guys there. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And signing out from Jamie, signing out from Bless, and signing out from Rich. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.